And so I remember, I never forget sitting there and I started crying and I was saying, I don't know my history. Like, I'm just black. Like, I don't know my history.
Hello and welcome to Keeping Watch, the show that decodes Florida politics while holding elected officials accountable. I'm Natasha Sutherland, and in today's episode, we'll discuss what's happening with Florida's education system, gun laws, and more. We'll have Rep. Angie Nixon on to chat about Black History Month, and we've got a special surprise at the end of the show. Be sure to listen all the way through for the details. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm the Deputy Director of Florida Watch with the mission to shine a light on shady politics here in the Sunshine State. I went from educator to political staffer and have been working in Florida politics since 2017. Like many of you, I didn't pay nearly as much attention to our government as I should have. We've made this show for you, to pull you in and arm you with the power of knowledge. If you have thoughts or feedback, be sure to write us at podcast@floridawatch.org. That's podcast@floridawatch.org. Let's get into it. So let's go through the headlines this week. First, Duval schools tell teachers to cover or store books. This is coming out of WJCT. Apparently, Duval teachers say they are being instructed to cover or store classroom libraries they have used for years to supplement their students' learning. The district's chief academic officer, Paula Renfro, tells teachers to temporarily pull books from classrooms. And Duval schools did confirm with WJCT News on Friday that the video was sent to principals to share with staff earlier this week. Apparently, books not on the district-approved list or they're not approved by certified media specialists are going to have to be put away until further notice. Another interesting headline, DeSantis is actively preparing for presidential run. Surprise, surprise. And Donald Trump is having a meltdown. I don't know that if I need to really go into a lot of that, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens. As you know, we all know that Ron DeSantis is making his bid for the White House. So get your popcorn ready. Another headline, DeSantis' elections police force is in shambles. This is coming out of the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Apparently, on his way to a second term, Governor DeSantis made election integrity a buzzword and got the legislature to spend $1.2 million on a new special unit to fight voter fraud. Interesting. Ooh, also, there's a Florida House dress code, apparently. So no skirts more than an inch above the knee. Wow, is this 2023? Oh, and here we go. Another story coming out of one of our colleges. Valencia College this time is halting their diversity training to comply with the Stop Woke, or what we like to call the Stop Learning law. There's an optional training class on diversity for faculty at a Central Florida public college that has been canceled so that administrators can ensure that it complies with the new state law. I want to remind our listeners that this is the same state law that has been cited for the reason why AP African American History was recently banned in Florida classrooms. Continuing in educational news, we have New College of Florida board trustee is going to replace the president and fire all faculty and staff to eliminate dogmatic wokeness. Wow. So just in a few days, we're seeing relentless attacks on education here in the state of Florida. I think really, folks need to think about the fact that this is not just a one-off thing, right? I mean, headline after headline, we're seeing things around education, college, and so I think that folks really need to be aware of what this is probably all about. Anytime we see these kinds of sort of huge headlines, right, that's just going to get Governor DeSantis a little bit more coverage in his bid for the White House, right? And he's sort of playing to his far right-wing primary voters to get them all excited and riled up for him, so that they vote for him, right, over his potential opponent, like we talked about, former President Trump. I think it's really scary, though, because we're sacrificing education, we're sacrificing the truth and honest teaching, supplemental books in classrooms, right? So it's really going to be interesting to see how all of this continues to play out in the state. But coming up next, I've got a great guest. I'm very, very excited to interview her, and I hope that you'll stick around.
Since you are here enjoying our show, please make sure to follow us on all of our socials so you can experience all Florida Watch and Keeping Watch news and information. We are at Florida Watch on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. While you're at it, check out our website at floridawatch.org and our partner website at progressflorida.org.
Welcome back, everybody. So I recently had the chance to chat with State Representative Angie Nixon out of Jacksonville, Florida. Born and raised in Jacksonville, she's been a state rep since 2020. Before that, she worked for a number of years as a community advocate and organizer, helping to lift up people struggling to get by. She led the sit-in last year on the House floor in protest of the congressional maps that gerrymandered Black Floridians out of having half of their congressional representation in the state of Florida. She started the Stop Black Attacks movement in the state and continues to be the voice of Black equality. And I am so excited that we get to kick it off with Black History Month today. Angie Nixon. Hey, Angie.
Hey, Natasha. It is so great to be here with you all today. And of course, during Black History Month, my favorite month of the year.
Happy Black History Month. I want to know from you, what does Black History Month mean to you?
So Black History Month to me means it is the celebration of my birthday. I was born in Black History Month. Yay! But even more so, it is the celebration of the achievements of folks within the Black diaspora and particularly within Black America. And so when I was growing up, we knew about Martin Luther King. We learned about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, but basically that was it in school. And so it wasn't until I got in college and became an adult that I started learning even more. And so Black History Month to me is just a time to reconnect. Well, no, I should be reconnecting with my ancestors year round, but it's a time for other folks to learn more about my ancestors, to learn more about how this country came to be off the backs and shoulders of Black people, and how we shouldn't be looked at as a threat. We should be looked at as some folks that were truly foundational and help really bring this country up, right? And so I think it's also a time to challenge the attacks on Black people. And I wish it was something that was celebrated year round. That's what it means to me.
I love that. For me as well, it was something that I didn't really get a chance to learn much about until college. Like that, the education that I received, full disclosure, military brat, went to 3 different high schools, tended to vary as to whether or not the full breadth of American history, because that's really what Black history is, right? We wouldn't have Black history if not for the United States, right? Like if they didn't bring us over, we wouldn't have Black history, right? So I'm just, just saying, just calling a thing. And so it it was jarring to me to be able to finally like sit in this class, which was mostly made up of Black students, and be able to finally learn about ourselves completely. And thinking, man, so many people, the largest, the majority of the population doesn't make it to college, right? For whatever reason, whether it's not for them or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, wow, they really miss out on the truth. And I think that that is, so important to ensuring that we don't make the same mistakes again, ensuring that together as a collective, Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, that we move forward together. Because, honestly, I think a lot of folks, if they were to study all of this and understand the work that folks like you and leaders of our past and the Black community have been doing, all we're asking for is equality. We're not even asking for more. Mm-hmm. We're not I read something, it was, I think it was a meme. It was like, Black people don't want revenge, right? And we just want the same thing as everybody else, right? And in America, this
Right.
amazing country, there's enough of the pie for everybody. And it's a
There
really,
really is.
it's a big lie when they make us think that we have to be fighting each other and stuff like that. But you
Exactly.
know,
I'll
go ahead.
never forget. I'll never forget when I was in college and I was attending a meeting for the Black Student Union inside the Institute of Black Culture because they developed this after some Black students, demanded back in the day to have equity and that type of stuff within the University of Florida. And so, I mean, I'm coming from Jacksonville, not knowing my full history, not being, my family not being from the islands, my family not being, from like my recent family not immigrating over from Africa. And so, oftentimes in college you have people that are shouting out like, I'm Jamaican, yeah, I'm Nigerian, I'm Bahamian. And so I remember, I never forget sitting there and I started crying and I was saying, I don't know my history. Like, I'm just Black. Like, I don't know my history. And I thought that, oh, I'm about to tear up now. I thought that I was like less than. And I'll never forget one girl, I can't remember her name. And she's like, your history is that you're Black and you come from folks that have had to endure and that were resilient and that helped build this country. And like they didn't teach us that in high school. And I guess that's why I'm so frustrated and I'm so vocal and I push back against what Governor DeSantis is doing. Because if you don't learn about your history, oftentimes you feel insecure, and you don't have a self-worth. And I didn't get myself, I feel as though I wasn't able to realize my self-worth into college during that moment. And so I feel like his attacks are really calculated and by design, because if we're able to leave people feeling unattached to their history, like they're never really gonna get out of an oppressive mindset, And so that's why I do what I do. That's why I don't code switch when I'm talking on the floor or speaking with people, because I want people to realize that you can be who you are, especially if you're Black, right? Like you should lean in that. You should live unapologetically, because we helped found this country, and we deserve to be who we are unapologetically. So sorry, I didn't mean to cry on this podcast. Whoa.
Do not, no, don't apologize. That was really moving and really, really beautiful. And I think it really, to me, highlights those attacks and exactly why. I think it's to keep young children from having a sense of pride in who they are. When you aren't proud of who you are, when you lack your self-confidence and things like that, I think, you're more likely to be bendable, right, to the systems in place to oppress you and things like that, and more likely to fall in the traps and things like that. But I hear you, and yes, and I needed somebody like you, when I was 12, 13 years old, trying to figure out, getting questions. Well, are you more Black or are you white? Whose side are you on? And, all of these things, and not really knowing, without having that sort of history and background and understanding of who I am and my ancestors and where they come from, or being able to answer for some of the kids, why isn't there a White History Month? Right? You just answered that question, right? Like, because white history is everything that we're learning. We are bathed in white history day in and day out, and that's it. And so we have to carve out, this bit of time in the year to be able to, figure out who we are and be proud of that. And it should be something you're proud of. So thank you so much for joining us, Angie. It's been a great conversation. And I just so appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Coming up next, folks, I'm going to be diving into permitless carry in the state of Florida. What does it mean for the rest of us? Stay tuned.
Florida has faced a growing affordability crisis with the cost of rent, utility bills, and insurance going through the roof. All while Ron DeSantis has tried to divide us and distract us from the favors he does for his billionaire corporate donors to advance his political ambitions. DeSantis Watch is a project dedicated to shining a spotlight on the governor's failures of leadership that make all of us less free. Go to DeSantisWatch.org and join the movement.
Now it's time for the deep dive. I know a lot of folks that are listening have probably never read a bill before or thought about reading a bill, but believe it or not, bills are actually pretty accessible. For one thing, that information is publicly available. So for example, in the state of Florida, you go to myfloridahouse.gov as, the House website, and you can type in any number or do a keyword search even to find information about legislation that has been filed. And so just for folks that maybe don't know what that is, right? Legislation is basically the proposal that our elected officials have to either make new laws or change existing laws. So like I said today, Permitless Carry is a bill that was just filed. It is now coded as HB 543. So if you go to the myfloridahouse.gov website, you can actually pull up HB 543 by typing in the number, or you can even type in something around, with keywords like concealed, weapons, something along those lines. But why we're doing this deep dive is I just really want to provide some context for you. So every morning I wake up, get my espresso like a good Italian girl, and I read through the main headlines, just to kind of see what to expect for the day, right? It really sets the tone. And it was so crazy to see when I opened up my email, because I subscribe to the local paper, the Tallahassee Democrat, and they give me sort of a news highlight every single morning. And it was crazy because let me read to you one headline right after the other that popped up in my email. The first headline said, "Bill filed to allow Florida gun owners to carry without a permit." Okay, that's the first line. The second line right after that, "Mass shooting in Lakeland, what we know." That was my morning. So I just, I think it's really important that we dive into this bill and really understand what this could mean for all of us. Right now in the Florida legislature, the Republicans have a supermajority. What does that mean? That means they have pretty much limitless control, right? They decide what bills are moving. They decide what eventually becomes law, and they don't really need, the opposition or the Democrats to help them make new laws, right? They can just do whatever they want. And so I thought, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So the legislation, when you pull it up here, it even says it, right? The title, "Concealed Carry of Weapons and Firearms Without a License." So it's going to essentially end the need to get a license to carry a concealed weapon. What does that mean? That means they're eliminating any training that's required, and they're eliminating any background checks. So I don't know if any of you have ever Googled Florida Man and your birthday, right? There's that fun thing that we do about Florida Man. Now imagine Florida Man, all the Florida men and women can just carry a gun wherever they want, whenever they want. And you don't know about it because it's concealed, right? Have no training. So I kind of want to call it clueless carry, but that's just me. So Florida would become the 26th state to allow permitless carry. Yes. So when we look at the bill, yes, it is 63 pages. Don't let that scare you. Most of it is just a copy of existing law. So really, you can actually just skim that and look for anything that is stricken out or underlined, because that's where the actual changes in the bill are going to be. So we're going on here and scanning, and we look at, how they crossed out the requirements, which I thought was interesting. So there it is. But then I just want to kind of point one thing out that I find really, really interesting. I'm going to go ahead and look at it now, actually. So we're on page 24 of this bill. And man, so there are a bunch of exceptions that are listed where people can still carry this. And it's interesting that they have these exceptions because they're not going to actually require anybody to learn about them because there is no training. So apparently people are going to be able to have guns, and they're not going to know where they're allowed to put these things, right? There are exceptions. And one of the places that is an exception is the legislature. So the very people that have filed this bill and have said, "Hey, Florida man, you can conceal carry your weapon," in Publix or Walmart or wherever, um, you can't bring it into the Florida House of Representatives or the Florida Senate. Um, just something to think about. Where else can folks not carry their weapons on this list? So they're not allowed to have them in schools. They're not allowed to have them in courthouses, right? So a lot of those requirements are still there. And I think it's very, very telling that when they had the opportunity to make it a complete free-for-all, they didn't, because it's a law that's for everybody else and not for them, right? They're still going to make sure that they're safe, but they're not really concerned if your child is safe, if you're safe when you're going shopping, if you're safe sitting on your front porch, if you're safe when you make somebody angry because you forgot your blinker when you were making a right turn. And so I think it's really, really important that folks understand what this is about. Okay, so aside from that, another thing that folks don't really think about when it comes to a law like this is that even when people are incredibly well trained and understand, how to carry a weapon, how to properly store it, safely, I think about military service members, right? So as somebody who's married to a veteran and this person, my husband, he was the armor, right, for the military. So his job was to understand, how weapons work and, safely carry them and things like that. And he and I were talking about this, and it was really interesting because he said, well, even in the Marines, when he gave me these stats actually, 185,830 active Marines. Okay. These are people that we consider the best of the best, elite, and well-trained. They still maintain statistics around something called negligent discharge. So this is when a weapon goes off, right? So a gun is fired, but it's an accident. Okay. So in 1 year, we've had, 54 out of those 185,000 folks with 48 injuries and 6 deaths. And these are the Marines. These are people that know what they're doing. And so now the legislature wants to make sure that people that have no clue about what they're doing are able to carry loaded weapons as well. Even here in my town, there was a road rage incident at a Books A Million parking lot. And, it turned deadly. So I think, folks really need to take a long, hard look at this and decide, is this the kind of society that we want to live in, where everybody is armed? I mean, is this Sparta or is this the United States of America? It's just, man, like right now, we just had another incident of an unarmed Black man, killed by police, right? So what is this going to do for public safety and policing in our state, in, the third most populous state in the country, with people from all over the world speaking all different languages? It's just a lot of tourism and things like that. What are law enforcement going to do, right? I mean, I know that, at a certain point in this country, they do already assume, or have to kind of assume, that folks are potentially armed. But now it's even more so, because now they are going to understand that not only are we all armed potentially, but we're also untrained and don't understand how the law works and have no clue about liability if something were to happen. And, so because here's one of the things that I thought was really interesting when talking to my husband about all this is that when folks go through the concealed carry permit training course, he was saying that quite a few people, they'll sign up and do the course, and by learning about the laws and sort of your duties as a concealed carry weapons, license holder, they're like, you know what, that's too much responsibility, and they end up not doing it. So a lot of people, I don't know, I just feel like the good guys that want guns can get the guns, right? They can take it upon themselves and do the training and understand the response. It's a huge responsibility. And they could do it with eyes wide open. Now we're making it so that folks really don't know what they're signing up for. And I think that in the end is going to harm everybody. But back to some of these stats here, apparently, according to our partners at Giffords, in order to be a hairstylist, training in Florida, right? So to be a hairstylist, it's 1,200 hours of training in order to cut hair, which is hilarious to me because I cut my own hair. Fun story about that. As a biracial woman, my hair, it's very fun, but not a lot of stylists know how to do it or what to do with it. And so even with 1,200 hours of training, I get turned away because they have no idea what to do with my hair. So there's that. Training to be a massage therapist, 500 hours. Okay, fine, great. Training to be a manicurist, so to do nails, 240 hours. And as far as I'm aware, life and limb is not at risk with any of these professions. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and take that down to 0 in Florida to carry a weapon. And one of the other stats that I think is really important to highlight here for listeners is that in states where they did go ahead and do away with, training and permits for concealed carry, they experienced a 22% increase in gun assaults and a 35% increase in gun homicides. So, yeah. But anyway, like I was talking about the law enforcement, I thought it was really interesting, and I want to lift up for folks that there are law enforcement officers out there that are speaking out against it. I know that, I've heard that many of them are afraid, right, for political reasons to come out and speak. But there was recently an op-ed that came out by Sheriff Mina, which is titled, "I oppose no permit and open carry gun laws. Here's why." And I thought this quote of his was really, really salient for this issue. And he says, "As a law enforcement officer who's been serving this community for over 30 years, I vehemently oppose any type of permitless or open carry legislation. I'm not alone. Many law enforcement leaders, even in states that allow it, oppose this senseless idea." Well, thank you all so much for joining me on that adventure, that deep dive into concealed carry weapons in the state of Florida. I know it was a lot, but I want you to just hang in there because we got a little bit of something that'll lighten things up for you at the end. Stay tuned.
Nothing changes in local or national politics unless you vote. And due to recent changes in Florida law, all requests for vote-by-mail ballots expired at the end of 2022. To continue to receive an absentee ballot and be able to vote by mail, contact your local supervisor of elections at myfloridaelections.com/contact-your-SOE and request your absentee ballot today. And now, a special highlight for Black History Month. Carrie P. Meek was the first Black woman ever elected to the Florida Senate and the first Black person to represent Florida in Congress since Reconstruction. A skilled lawmaker, Meek passed humanitarian legislation including bills to promote literacy, help students stay in school, and extend U.S. residency for immigrants and refugees. One of her most famous quotes is, "Until we all start to take responsibility, until we do all we can to improve the character of our communities, we will never break the cycle of violence and indifference." This show and all of our work would be impossible without your support. At Florida Watch, we do research, create graphics and video content, and keep an eye on issues that matter to all of us. We also work hard to keep things fun and informative with our goal to hold accountable extreme politicians like Ron DeSantis. Head over to floridawatch.org and click donate to support our cause to help keep up the fight to keep Florida educated, fair, and tolerant.
Thanks for joining us. We talked about what's happening in Florida's education system, gun laws, and so much more. We hope that was all very useful and informative. As always, if you have any questions for us at Keeping Watch, send us an email at podcast@floridawatch.org. Be sure to join us next time on Keeping Watch. Take care. See you soon.